If you use CHILDES or TalkBank data in your research, how do you handle the data more programmatically? Coming up next on Language Coder. Hi there. A few days ago, I gave a talk at the workshop on innovations in Cantonese linguistics hosted by The Ohio State University. My talk was a demonstration for how to handle CHILDES and TalkBank data more programmatically with a focus on Cantonese data. Big shout out to the organizers who did an amazing job putting together the event. I thought I should share the recorded video with all of you, so here it is. Thank you for watching this video. Please give it a like and subscribe to this channel, especially if you want more content from me in the future. If you also use CHILDES or TalkBank data in your research, please leave a comment below and let me know what you're working on. Thank you. Okay, so along the same theme for this workshop session, I'm going to do a demo to sort of along the same lines, like to show how some of the recent computational tools can be leveraged for more efficient, more scalable Cantonese linguistic research. And in my demo here, my focus will be 2 case studies related to Cantonese corpus data. I should specify I'm going to use CHILDES data for language development. Before I dive right into to the 2 case studies, I want to highlight the data set that I'm using throughout my demo for both case studies. And that data set is the Yip-Matthews CHILDES data set. This data set is awesome. It's Cantonese English bilinguals. Right now, there's data for 9 bilinguals, 9 children. Is huge, not just for the amount of transcribed data that the team has created over the years, and also they included audio and video data. If you download the files, it's a lot of data. It's like 35 gigabytes or something like that. It's huge. So instead of doing the more traditional method, like going to the CHILDES website, download the chat data format, the chat data files, the zip file, and then you go from there. Perhaps obviously what I do is I do everything in Python. I have a package called PyCantonese, and then I use that to sort of directly read in the data, which is exactly what I'm going to do. So to do that, so again, I'm running this notebook locally, so I have everything set up correctly, so I can import packages like PyCantonese, and then other Python packages for like data analysis, data science stuff like pandas for data frames, Seaborn for data visualization, which we're going to use. And then I'm just going to run the cells for this notebook one by one, like so that you guys see what I'm doing and can follow along. So let me run this. Okay, now it's done. And then the next line, I can like directly try to read in the data from the Yip-Matthews corpus. So there's a function called read chat. And then I think Charles also showed this functionality a little bit, like if you have the zip link for a chat data set, somewhere online, if you have the direct URL, you can just put it right in here and then just run it. It's going to take a few seconds because this corpus is huge. What's happening right now is it's downloading a zip, unzipping it locally, and then accessing your the chat files inside, parsing everything inside all the files, and then returning you a nice corpus object that encapsulates all the files, the utterances, the tokens, and metadata and whatnot, like everything you would need in your research. Okay, looks like it's done. So now we have this corpus object. I call it Yip-Matthews because we know exactly this corpus is the Yip-Matthews corpus. So with this, we can call a bunch of like methods, and that's how you access the functions, the information from this corpus. So the first one, again, I think Charles also used it as well. So it's the info. So that gives you a high-level overview of a given corpus object. So here we can see that this corpus has like over 500 chat files, 400,000 sentences, and also almost 2 million words. Again, it's huge. Apart from that, you can see a little bit of information about how the data files are structured in this corpus. So we can see, since this corpus is about Cantonese English bilinguals, and in the recordings, sometimes a child it's, this recording might be for like Cantonese and another one might be for English. The way they structure files is they have these like subdirectory structure. So under Yip-Matthews, they have like can for Cantonese, and then they also have eng for English. And then under each of which, like can or like Cantonese and English, they have another subfolder for like each of the 9 children. So for example, you can see Alicia Cantonese, and then under that, you will finally see the individual chat files here. CHILDES organizes data by the age, by when the recording was done for the child. So the way to understand, like the way to make sense of these, like sort of, if you don't know CHILDES, this might look cryptic to you, but actually it's very informative. So if you see like 01, 03, 110, 10, what it means is this recording was done when the child was 1 year, 3 months, and 10 days old. So the child name, the file name itself tells you the child's age for that recording. Okay, so with that background in mind, now we can dive right into the first case study. Perhaps not surprisingly, first case study comes from Yip and Matthews themselves. And in particular, I don't know whether you guys see my screen here, but this is the monograph, the Yip and Matthews 2007 monograph, The Bilingual Child, Early Development and Language Contact. So in that book, they, since it's a monograph, they talk about several topics. One of them is language dominance, the questions about language dominance in Cantonese English bilinguals, for things like which of the 2 languages developed faster or slower for a given child for a given period of time, and whether there's like any reasons, like any way to find out why, that sort of thing. That's what I study. If you haven't read this book, go check it out from the library. So it's really interesting. So to measure language dominance, the standard metric is something called MLU, mean length of utterance. So before I show like code and run code and things like that, let me show you what they have reported in their book. So okay, here on screen you can see 2 pictures. They come directly from the monograph. So there are 9 children in their corpus right now. In fact, 3 of them are their own children, Timmy, Sophie, and Alicia. On screen here, I'm showing the MLU plots for the 2 of their children, Sophie and Alicia. So for Sophie, you can see, let's see if I can fill this up a little bit. It might be a little better. Okay, so the way to see this plot is, so x-axis is the age. So we can see for Sophie's data here is from 1 year and when she was 1 year and 6 months old, all the way up to when she was 3 years and 0 months old. And then y-axis is the MLU. And then the plots are, for each point is the MLU computate, the computer MLU, that number for that particular chat file for a given language, either Cantonese or English. We can see that for Sophie's data, it just happens to be the case for this period of time, there isn't much, whether a language like surpass another one, like crisscrossing, that sort of pattern. I think we saw something like that in other children, but that's not the case for Sophie. And then if we look at Alicia, her own sister, Alicia has a slightly different pattern. So for Alicia, her data in this plot here goes from 1 year and 3 months old all the way to 3 years and 0 months old. It happens to be the case that in this data, it looks like, what is the line above? Let's see, it's Cantonese. So Alicia's Cantonese for this period of time, it looks like measured by MLU, like her Cantonese developed faster than her English did. So yeah, language dominance. There's a lot of variation, even among siblings and even among within same family, a family of linguists. So perhaps not too surprising. Okay, so now that with this little background in mind, I'm going to try to replicate the results here using more programmatic methods. But before that, writing code is cool. Writing code is it's cool and fun, and it's like very powerful. But before we do that, we have to recognize and we have to ask ourselves, like, what do we need to write code for, and what are we trying to do, like before you actually start coding. So here to replicate the results and then possibly extending to like your own research. So if you look at the plot, you can see the set of numbers that we will need to generate a plot like this. So we need to obtain the ages from the data for a given child, for a given language. And then we have to be able to compute the MLU. And then before these two steps, actually, I forgot one thing. It might be too obvious, but the Yip-Matthews corpus is like the entire corpus with 9 children with both English and Cantonese. And sometimes there's also a third section called mixed. Before you can do anything, you have to be able to like partition the data. So you have to slice and dice the data like for the exact subset of data that you want to use. So in this case, you have to know how to get, let's say, I just want Sophie's data, and then here is Sophie's data. But not even that. So within Sophie's data, you have to know how to do like, I just want Sophie's Cantonese data instead of English, or the opposite. So we're gonna do like all of these things in order to like sort of replicate plots like that. Okay, enough talking. Finally run some code here. So above, we already created this Yip-Matthews object, which is the corpus object that represents the entire corpus. So I'm going to run this info function again, but with verbose being true. Why? Because I want to see, once again, the file paths. Why do I care about those? Because I just want to see how we can make use of the file path information to help us slice the data for what we want. Because like I just mentioned, like you have to be able to say, for example, I just want Alicia's Cantonese data, for example. So in this case, you can tell the computer and say, hey, give me just the data for whenever the file matches the substring, for the file path of Alicia Can, then I know for sure like that's just Alicia's Cantonese data. So that's kind of the strategy that I'm going to use. Okay, let me scroll down. There's a lot of files here, so 500. Okay, here we are. Okay, so now let's say we want Sophie's Cantonese data. If you have a corpus object, there's a method called filter, and it accepts a string, which is going to match by the file path for what you want. So if I run this cell, well, it's done, and then we have another corpus object. We don't know what that is, so let's check it out. Let's ask for the overview information. So indeed, instead of 500 files, now we have only 41 files. And then if we take a sneak peek of the file paths, we can be reasonably sure that it is just Sophie's Cantonese data instead of the entire Yip-Matthews data. Okay, so next, what's going to happen is, so now I've just shown you guys like, given a corpus object, you can slice and dice the data however you want. Next, we need to know how to get the age and also compute the MLU. To do that, instead of doing, just run a function and show you guys, hey, here are numbers, great. I'm going to run those function calls inside a function that we are going to define. Why do I want to do this? Because ultimately what I want is really, to automate, to make the process very efficient. Like you can say, hey, I want this child's result. Just computer, give me the result immediately. And that's kind of what I want, like to streamline, to automate as much as we can. Okay, so here's a function that we are trying to define in Python. So I just call it get Matthews MLU df. df stands for data frame. To say the reason why I named it this way is I want this function to ultimately return a data frame. With a data frame, we can do a lot of things, which we'll sort of get to as well. Okay, so at a high level, what this function does is tell me which child you care about right now. And then you will see something familiar. So given the Yip-Matthews corpus object, you can filter it down to, just the Cantonese data and just the English data separately for the given child. Since again, we have knowledge about how the file paths look like. And so now we have two sub corpora, if you will. So with these two subsets of data, we can separately calculate things like MLU. Here I'm using MLUW, which is a function already defined for corpus objects in PyCantonese. MLUW means MLU by word, because there are two flavors of MLU. There's one by word. There's also one by morpheme. If you read the monograph, read the book, they have a whole paragraph at least, or if not section, talking about, for example, justifying the use of MLU for both English and Chinese, talking about things like the morphology and why it's justifiable, to do that, because child English is pretty isolating as well, so it's okay to compare the two languages using MLU and all that stuff. But yeah, long story short, they use MLU by word, and that's what I'm going to do here as well. So this is going to be a list of numbers for the MLU for Cantonese for a given child, like just a list of float numbers. And we're going to use them to make plots. And then finally, before we can make plots, we need to extract the ages for each file, the chat files that we have. And we need to do that separately for Cantonese and English. Given a corpus object, there is a function already that says ages, and then gives you all the ages back. So here I call months being true because I want to convert. So instead of using the childish format like how many years, how many months, how many days, which Python doesn't know how to handle very well, I make it like, convert stuff like all the numbers into months so that it's easier to handle when you make plots. Okay, so with all the stuff ready, we are ready to put everything together into a data frame using pandas. And this is what this code is trying to do. And then finally, we get a data frame. So if I run this cell, it defines the function. It doesn't run the function for anything. And the next cell, we actually we call that function on a given child. So let's say Sophie. And we run this. And then we get the data frame returned, df underscore Sophie. And then to take a look what that is, we can see exactly what you would expect. It's just a table with 3 columns, age in months, MLU, and language. With a data frame, there's a couple of things you can do. Number one, which I haven't done. Number one is if you want to keep the data on this as a C somehow, like with a pandas df, you can always do like to CSV and then some local data file path, for example. Then you can keep it for your research purposes. But for now, that is not my interest. My interest is I want to reproduce the plots. So with a data frame, I can throw that into a data visualization library, such as Seaborn in Python. Seaborn in Python is kind of like, it's like ggplot2 in R for those who use R. So to do that, I'm going to write another function to just wrap things nicely so that we can reuse the code more easily. So this function says, give me a child, and then I'll run the function that you've just defined, like the one that gets you a df. And then with this data frame, the rest of the code is just like, make a plot. That's pretty much it. And then lastly, I threw in a line that says, hey, please save that plot as a figure. And here it says it's a PDF. If you want, you can save it as an image, PNG, JPEG, anything you want, if you want to use that for a paper, for example. Okay, so let me define that function. And then in the next cell, let me actually run the function for, let's say, Sophie. And voila, so we're done. So we'll plot here. And then for convenience, for comparison, if I can adjust my window size a little bit, below this plot that we just created, I also repeat the plot for Sophie, just to show you that yeah, we pretty much got the same thing. Like it's pretty comparable if you look at the shape of the dots, like the data points, and then you compare that, and then you can see, for example, there's a little spike around, I don't know, 2 years and 5 months. So 2 years, 5 months, how many months is that? Like 24 plus 5, it's like around 29 or so. So it's around here. There's a little spike for English. That checks out. So we can be reasonably, we can be pretty like reasonably like sure, like this is like our code is doing pretty much what the published like plot was trying to show as well. So that's pretty nice. Okay, so what's the point of defining functions and whatnot? Well, you can immediately apply your code to like just another child, like Alicia. So let's run this, and we get another plot. So here, our plot produces the results for Alicia here, and again, I repeat the plot for Alicia. Again, for Alicia, the different pattern is that it looks like for the period of time that we're looking at, it looks like her Cantonese developed a little faster than her English did. And indeed, we saw that pretty much the same pattern from the plot that we created from our code, which is nice. By the way, I should add this footnote here. Using the Python Seaborn library to make plots like that, it by default, it also gives you like regression lines and like error bands and things like that. These are just defaults. If you don't like them, you can turn them off. But I just leave them up like because they're default, and it seems to be nice to show the lines so that you can see the trends more easily. Okay, so I have a question here. How is this approach to computing and plotting MU better than a more traditional approach? Okay, by a more traditional approach, I think they explained this in the book. I think they used the standard program called CLAN, C-L-A-N. CLAN is a computer program that comes from the same team from CMU, the same team of people who manage, who do all the amazing work for CHILDES, for TalkBank. So basically everybody in linguistics, in psychology who work on child language, they use CLAN, which I don't. So my point here is that if you know how to do things more programmatically, like more automatically, then you can streamline your process. You can have functions like that. Then you can apply results. You can reproduce results more easily, rather than, for example, you have to use a CLAN program to generate some numbers, and then you have to put the numbers, I'm pretty sure they use Excel, put the numbers into Excel, and then using Excel to make plots. Like there's nothing wrong with that. But then in my view, I think doing things more programmatically, it's more efficient, it's more streamlined, and definitely makes things more like reproducible and like more extensible. You can apply your code to other like new data sets more easily. So that's that for my case one. And final remark for case one, the code is here. So this example was a little straightforward in the sense that a lot of functions, a lot of things that we need, like, how do you get MLU, like things like that, it's already implemented for you, like in a package. I'm sure there are cases like if you do your research, you have your own metrics, you have your own research interests, you have to find your own stuff, like something that you care about for your research questions. Then in that case, you have to be more skillful. You have to know how to, you have a corpus object, you have to know how to traverse through the object to find the thing that you want. So for that, you need a little more skill and to understand the data structure inside the corpus object. So for that, there's this other tutorial that we sort of did last year in the School of Cantonese Studies. I'll put a link in the chat here later. So check that out if you want more details about that. Okay, so that's case one. So case one, again, is straightforward for another reason, because so to speak, all you have to do is to write code, like, given some childish data, and then you can like do some data munging, and then you can get some results like pretty easily, like relatively at least. What if your research is more complicated? By more complicated, I mean, what if your work requires, I have some childish data, I need to do some manual annotation. For example, you need some like human judgment. You have to like make some notes somewhere like for every single data points. And then after that, your data analysis, your research depends on your annotation. What do you do in those cases? So that's what my second case study is all about. And then another thing I want to talk about is I feel like I've been talking about like text data like all the time, and I was trying to look for something more fun. So apart from text data, well, Yip-Matthews corpus has like all the audio data, like all the like media data files. So why not use them? So that's what I was trying to do when I prepare this talk. So you're gonna see a little bit of that for audio. So for all these reasons, a recent paper that I've chosen for this case study is a paper by Peggy Mok and Albert Lee. It's a paper that came out in 2018 in Journal of Child Language, where they study tonal acquisition of Cantonese English bilinguals. Not surprisingly, the data comes from Yip-Matthews, the corpus. So essentially, like at a very high level, what they did was they did auditory analysis, which really means they had to actually listen to the audio files. They had to make like human judgment about like, oh, did the child produce, you know, that citation tone correctly, thumbs up, thumbs down, or like to mark down the tone that they think they heard, you know, something like that. And then the paper basically is, you know, that paper depends on that, like their own annotation work. Okay, so for my purpose today, what I'm really trying to do is I'm trying to replicate their procedure, like as much as possible, like especially by automation, not like, if possible, not by hand. So, and now we're gonna read their paragraph for their procedure. What I really want to think about is, can we do that automatically, like instead of like doing by hand or something like that? Okay, so let me start reading this. So they say, we first extracted the online transcript of the recordings. Can we do that programmatically? Of course we can. We just did it. A list of all syllables produced by the target child in the sound file in question was compiled. Now, this sentence is important. It tells you the unit of analysis that they care about, which is they care about like the data at the syllable level. So that's important. The other thing is perhaps obvious, but it's important to say is they are looking at the child speech, not child-directed speech. So that's important. So when you look at your data, you have to know how to filter data by what they want, or by what you want, if you're the one doing the research. And then they continue. So the next sentence is really telling you, like, for each tone that they're going to get, what information they care about and they need to record. So they need the line number. So as we know, there's like a whole bunch of chat data files. In each file, there's a bunch of utterances, and then you can say utterance number 1, number 2, and so on. So they need that info. And then they also need to know the for a given tone, what is the Chinese character that it's supposed to be for, and also the tone itself. And then the last sentence here, each sound file was listened to. Okay, this sentence we cannot automate, because the whole point of the research is you have to listen to the audio, and then you have to judge like whether it's like right or wrong, or like what tone you heard. So, and we'll get to that a little bit. So apart from this paragraph, if you read the paper, which I highly recommend, it's fascinating. They, in their discussion, they also show that they actually care about something else as well for each the tone that they study, which is they need to know whether the syllable is like, you know, given a word, it could be one syllable, it could be many. Is syllable like left or medial or final, or is it just one syllable? So they need that information as well. Okay, so a lot about this paper in particular, but if you zoom out a little bit, what's really important for like to prepare for like manual work for this sort of thing is you probably want some sort of spreadsheet or a CSV or something like that, so that, you know, you have the spreadsheet and then you have a column for a human researcher to make notes about something that you care about. And then the next thing is for your research, you really have to determine the unit of analysis based on your research. So that probably will become the basis for the, the rows, the CSV rows in your spreadsheet. So in the case of Mok and Lee, the unit of analysis is the syllables. So each syllable from the child is going to be like one row at a time. Next, for each unit of analysis, you have to know what information you care about for the purposes of your analysis. So by that, I mean, for example, they also specify, like, they need to know the line number, they need to know the Chinese character and things like that. And also the variables that you would need, like, for example, if you run like analysis later for stats, so you have to know like what variables you will need, for example, if you do like correlation and things like that. So you have to think about that. And finally, with that information in mind, that's where you want to try to create a setup that will allow you to generate the spreadsheet that you need as automatically as possible. So in my case, in the following, I'm going to do it obviously in code in Python. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. Okay, so this was at a high level. Now back to the paper itself. So in this paper, given that information from their procedure, what we probably would need if you were them, or if you are doing your research, trying to extend their work, or trying to do something similar, or like really anything that is like, you have a corpus object, and then you want to do this kind of manual work to prepare for a spreadsheet. So in this case, we want these columns to be present in your output CSV for your work. So we need a file name, because we need to know which file. We need to know which line it is in that file. And then in that line, we want to know which Chinese character it is. And then we need to know the syllable position, like left, medial, final, or monosyllable, citation tone, obviously. And finally, I also added like a dummy column, well, dummy for now, because it has no info now. But then the human researcher will have to jump in and, to mark which tone they heard from the recording. Okay, again, there's a lot of talking here. Let's run a little bit code to make things work. So first of all, starting point is the Yip-Matthews data set. For example, like let's say I sort of followed their paper for the sub data sets that they use. So here I'm using CHILDES data for Cantonese. The reason why I want to run this cell is to show in particular like the 3 data files that Mok and Lee used for their paper. So it's exactly these files. They have reasons for that, because they want to compare their results with monolingual Cantonese results. They have to find data sets, for which both sides have like audio files, like data. So that's kind of part of the reasons why they chose the data that they did. Okay, so now that we know, okay, we want to pick just these 3 files, not the whole thing for CHILDES Cantonese. Can we do that? Yes. So the filter function actually accepts. So it does accept a string, but actually the string is it's a regular expression. So if you know that it's CHILDES can / and then the next bit, that it's a disjunction of like a bunch of things. You can do regular expression matching like this. So we know exactly we want either to like 2519, 2616, or 2723. So if you run this, you get a corpus object. And to like for sort of sanity check to make sure this is what we think it is, we can run the info again. And good news, it has exactly 3 files, precisely the 3 files that we want. So now we know for sure this object has just the data that you would care about. Okay, so from the next cell is the largest cell with a lot of code. I'm not going to walk through every single detail in Python here. The purpose of this cell is to define a function. This function is going to take a corpus object like CHILDES Cantonese, which just defined. What's going to do is it's going to create a CSV, and then you tell Python, hey, I want these column names, the column names that we've just talked about. Write a CSV header, And then the rest of the code is a bunch, like a giant nested for loop here. Why do we need a nested for loop? Well, childish data, it has 3 data files, 1, 2, 3. In each file, there's a bunch of utterances. We have to loop through each of them. So that's here. And then for each of them, we have to determine, hey, is that child speech? Yes, keep it. No, forget about it. Next one. If it is child speech, use it. And then in each token, because there's like tokens in that. For each token, you loop through that as well. And then you have to check. I'm going to skip over this like for details. And then for each token, you may have one tone to care about. You may have several, and you take care of that. And then that's how you, for example, get things like, is it medial, is it final, is it monosyll, and so on. And then finally, with all that code, you are ready to create a row in a Python dict, and then you can push it out to a CSV. That's what this function is. It's all about. Okay, I've just run this cell to define a function, and then now we are ready to run this function over childish data for Cantonese, and then voila, done. It's less than 1 second. What just happened on disk? Let's check it out. Okay, can you guys see this? If I make this wider, you guys could still see what I'm looking at, hopefully. Okay, so let me scroll this notebook back. Okay, I'll let this sink in a little bit, like on the screen here on the right. So one question I have you guys is, if you were to do something similar, like similar research where you need manual annotation work using childish data or really any corpus data, like for example, like the way Charles or Azab did, like you may have other data sets, you can create a corpus object, and then you need to do some manual work like that. And then you have to do some, create a CSV so that you or someone else, your students or whoever needs to do like open a spreadsheet and then do some like manual work here. How long would it take you to do usually if you did not write code, if you did not do something automatic? If you do it like, for example, manually, like, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure the answer is like, it's going to be a pain. It's going to take forever. Like, it's very labor intensive. So once again, the point here is like, make full use of your computer. Try to automate processes as much as you can. So that, for example, like in case you screw up, you can always go back to your code. You can always rerun your code, rerun your functions to generate functions again, to generate the CSV again. It's very easy to do. Okay, are we done yet? No, this is only half of the battle. So we have the CSV. We have to do the manual annotation work. So this is just the beginning of the hardest part of this research, I feel like. Okay, so time for annotations. So this is where I started playing with my own code, PyCantonese, for a little bit of like experimental features. So what I want here to do, so if I were to do this research or were to like extend this research in some way, so to do that, so on the right, I have my CSV, great, but now what? I need some way to like, I want to be able to listen to each utterance that I care about, so that when I click something, listen to it, and then I have a judgment in my mind, and then on the right or in my own spreadsheet, I can like make a note about what I heard. That's something that I would want, and that's sort of what I'm trying to do, and also trying to show today. Before that, a little bit of footnote here. When we created the CSV, like that giant function, it actually returns the list of utterances that we will care about. And with that information, I'm just going to show you. And you guys will see what I'm talking about. Okay. All right, so here we are. So let me go to the right, actually, a little bit. So on the right, we can see file name columns here. We know for this file, for this line, for this character, we have some citation tone. And then you, as a human, you listen to you want to listen to some audio, and to make a note here, where's the audio? Well, it's on the left here. So here I have found a way to sort of try to give me to ask the computer, give me exactly the lines that you would care about. So now, okay, before I play this, you see whoever transcribed this, already made a note, like, so it's supposed to be fu, like tone three, fu. They already made a note like, oh, it's an error. So let's see whether that checks out. Did you get that? Once again. Okay. So according to both myself and also the paper, so this is actually one of the most interesting findings from this paper. According to them, they found quite a bit of this, this template, this tonal template thing, like, tone 1, tone 4, when, for example, when the input is supposed to be like tone 3, like here, fu, or for those who haven't read the paper, let me spell it for you. They also found things like tone 1 would become like tone 1, tone 4. Things like 单车 would become 单车. Another example, I think, was 香蕉 becoming 香蕉, which is pretty cool. So here, exactly. So yeah, if you were to do this research, so you play this. Okay, I think I heard 1, 4 instead of something else. So I do 1 and then 4, and then you can do the next line. Again, like the convenience here is that you have already like filtered down to like exactly what you want. So this interface, which I'm still like playing with, it's not probably available anywhere yet. So if I play this, so Charlotte still said fufu instead of fufu, so it's 1, 4 again. Oh, 1, 4. You get the idea. So you have the data. You can do your manual work like more easily. That pretty much wraps up what I was trying to show for this case too, for how to make research like more efficient, more scalable, to streamline processes. Before I pause, I have another cell here at the end. Okay, so yeah, just a little bit of like extra resources here after the 3 demo talks here, and also a little bit stuff for myself as well. I mentioned this a little bit. Last year, the 3 of us, Charles, Azab, and myself, we did a series of tutorials about pretty much the same thing, like using computational tools to do Cantonese work. It's not exactly the same talks like today. They were not the same thing. So the links, I can also drop a link here in the chat here. So all the notebooks I can show you here actually. So yeah, last year, the 3 of us all use like Google Colab. We have a notebook. All the code is online on GitHub. So nothing is hidden. So check them out. Another thing is there is a Facebook page for PyCantonese. Sometimes that's where I share people like, hey, this is something I'm working on. After this session today, I'll make a message there like, hey, like, if there are any questions like like, let's say you feel comfortable asking publicly, like after this chat session ended, you can always use that. Finally, this is something about myself. You probably know that I currently work in the private sector. I also do like freelance consulting, things like that. So if there's a good fit for work, for project, if there's any need for like technical consulting, for training, teaching a class, like consultation for project work in particular, if something fits, and if you have funding, if you can hire a freelancer with no constraints like administrative or legal or anything like that, feel free to reach out. My door is open for business. All right, so that'll do for me. Thank you for your attention here. I will take questions in the chat here.